The father of genetics. Anybody know who he is? Because his name is right under. Mendel. I forgot to uncover the other one. Mendel. He obviously was a genius. Whenever I talk about scientists in this class, no lie, they have to be the smartest people in the world. Because what they thought of and then what they said, let's do it. That's great. There's a lot of them. He came up with a hypothesis of inheritance. So basically, he figured out a way to explain to you why you look the way you look and why you carry the makeup that you have inside your body. He knows, or he believed, I'm not going to say he knows yet, because let's go back in time when Mendel said, hey, why is this flower purple? Why is this flower white? So he realized that we have factors in our body called what? Genes. And those genes are passed on from one generation to the next, okay? In some form, yes. In some form or another, and they can go away. Genes can go away, but if they're strong genes, they tend to last longer. Strong meaning dominant, okay? Mendel thought of certain things, okay? He thought these things. He said they're alternative forms of genes, and they're called alleles. Like you have a pair, so it could be the same or they could be different, right? They could be homozygous or heterozygous. Each organism has how many alleles? 34. Pair, 2, okay? That's chromosomes, and it's not 34. 2 alleles for each gene factor. So for each trait, if you want to call it that, you have minimum, I'm going to say, because later we're going to learn other things, 2 alleles. One of those alleles comes from who? Our parents. So one comes from mom, one comes from dad, okay? So remember when we did mitosis, we talked about your body cells reproducing identical cells. And then we talked about meiosis. And in meiosis, your sex cells produce a cell with half the number of chromosomes, or half of the allele pairs, or half of the genotype pairs, right? So we're going to review that before we start offspring. So Mendel said, if 2 alleles are the same, the organism is? What's the word for same? Homozygous. If 2 alleles are different, the organism is? Heterozygous. Now, he also said, if you're a heterozygous, or you carry the heterozygous pair of alleles for a trait, if the allele is expressed, or the trait shows, then it is what? What pair of the allele? So if you're heterozygous and you show the trait, what allele is that? What allele would it be? A dominant or recessive? Dominant. Because the dominant hides the recessive. So the allele that doesn't appear, or you can't see, if you want to change the word to the allele that you see. So instead of the word expressed, let's add the word see. So that makes more sense to you, right? The allele that doesn't appear, or the allele that's hidden, right, is the recessive one. So here are flowers, and I don't even know why I put these flowers, because we don't want to see anything pink. So delete those flowers, and we're not even going to cover them. We're not covering pink yet, okay? Nope, just delete them. Put a big fat line over them. So as you knew, or some people remembered, Mendel used pea plants to study his hypothesis, right? He said, I'm going to try something. And he chose pea plants for 3 main reasons. Anybody know what they are?
Easy to use pea plants. Because they were easy.
What do you see here? What do you see happening?
They grow.
They grow. They're easy to grow, and they grow super fast too. Yeah. So they produce a lot of offspring and fast. So it's like gives them a whole nice volume of things to experiment. And then look at these traits. They're easily observable traits. They're simple traits to see, like height, color, texture, easy traits, right? So that's why he chose pea plants. So Mendel, what he did was he cross-fertilized. He interbred these plants himself. That's a whole other topic, okay? That's later on, okay, when we study plants again. He crossbred what he called pure bred, and that's another word for homozygous, okay? He called those his parents, or P1 generation, okay? Crossbred homozygous parents, and then the offspring that was produced, he called them the F1 generation, and they're also called hybrids. Like, have you ever heard like a dog that's a purebred dog? That means he has all those strong, wanted genes, supposedly, right? And then he breeds with another dog and they produce a mutt. They also call him a hybrid, right? So this is kind of that, okay? So if he bred purebred pea plants, okay, let's just say these were my pea plants. Purple is dominant to white. What is this flower's genotype? Who could tell me? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Nathaniel. What kind of peas? Good job. Capital P, no. Pure bred homozygous. The only option is capital P, because purple is dominant to white. So what would the white be? Raise your hand if you could tell me. Good job. Little p. So my parents were one dominant trait, homozygous, and then one recessive trait, homozygous. What's the offspring? Raise your hand if you could tell me that. Good job. Capital P, oh, there it is. Capital P, little p, which means the offspring was what? Heterozygous. Good. And that's not coming out in the video, maybe, because it's kind of coming off, so make sure you write the word heterozygous. Actually, I can move up the word there. These are some examples of Mendel's pea plants. Just some. There's a lot of other varieties, okay? So what do we call Mendel's parents? Offspring. F1 generation. These are the parents. Mendel's parents are P1. Mendel's offspring are F1. All the P1, or all the parents were what? Homozygous and what we call purebred, okay? So you know you're going to be using homozygous alleles. All right. So here's my dominant trait. Here's my recessive trait. Raise your hand if you could tell me the alleles for height. For Mendel's parents. Dominant is on top, recessive is on the bottom, and we're talking about height. I didn't call on you. I'm going to call on Ryan. Height. So what is the dominant trait? Tell me what the dominant trait is. Read it. What is this dominant trait? Good. And what's the short parent? Awesome. Lowercase t. Who could tell me about seed shape? Go ahead. Nick. Good. Because round is dominant to wrinkled, so we're going to use the letter R, okay? Who could tell me about seed color?
Capital Y.
Good.
And also, no wait.
And green would be?
And the green would be little y and little y.
Awesome. Little y. And then we've got seed color, green versus white.
Capital G.
Good.
Lowercase g.
And the pattern continues. What letter are we using for inflated versus constricted? I, capital I, little I. What letter are we using for green versus yellow? G, capital G, little g. What letter are we using for axial? A, capital A, little a. Mendel's pea plants, or what we call the babies or the offspring, it's hard to call a flower a baby, right? But the offspring of the plant of the parent generation, okay, was called F1, and they're all heterozygous. And when you're heterozygous, what happens? You always going to show what? You're always going to carry two different alleles, but you're always going to show what? The dominant trait, okay? So remember here that tall is dominant to short, purple is dominant to white, yellow, right? So what now comes the harder question. What is the genotype of this plant for the F1 generation for the tall or short trait? Raise your hand if you could tell me. Yes. Yes. What is the phenotype? Who could tell me that? Raise your hand. Tall. Good job. All right. Genotype for the purple flower here. Good job. Capital P, little p. What's the phenotype? Purple. What about for this one right here?
What is that?
Look at the top.
Yellow or green? Oh, it's C. Uppercase Y, lowercase y.
Awesome. Phenotype?
Yellow.
Yellow. And then just blurt it out. Go.
Capital G, lowercase g.
Smooth
Capital
or
S,
wrinkled?
S, capital S. lowercase
Capital S, little s. And
green. Smooth.
smooth. You want to say green because you're looking at green, but always remember the trait is whatever is being measured there. And then this one is yellow or green. So we got capital Y, little y, yellow. Good job, guys. Mendel didn't stop there. He said, why do I only have purple flowers if I started with purple and white? Why do I only have green if I started with green and yellow? So he said, I'm going to cross the babies. I'm going to cross the F1 generation, which is also called what?
Pure.
No, not pure. The babies are called hybrids, good, which are all, I heard it, heterozygous, good. He crossed the offspring, which are called F1 or hybrids, which are all heterozygous, and then he called them F2 generation. That's pretty easy to remember. So he took F1 and bred them, and he came up with F2. And then he kind of freaked out because, I'm saying this because I was with him, just kidding, because he actually ended up with some white flowers. So he's like, hey, the white came back. The only explanation for the white coming back is that gene was somewhere hidden there, like he predicted, which meant recessive genes were there, which we know because all our offspring carry the recessive alleles, yes?
Yes.
Just don't show it because the dominant masks the recessive. But when you cross the offspring, some of them did show it, okay? This is how you predict it, and this is what I'm going to go over tomorrow. Here's one offspring, F1. Here's another F1, and here are the babies. These are not, that doesn't mean when he crossed this and he crossed this, he got 4 kids. It means every time he crossed, there's a possibility that this can happen. Yes.
So he kept them